Welcome to my review for Cash on Demand. You'll find all my other Hammer reviews in my Hammer playlist. There will be spoilers today, and as much as it pains me to say it, I do think you should watch the movie before you have this one spoiled for you. The ending is very hard to guess. For maximum enjoyment, I would absolutely say go in blind. So I watched this the other night for the first ever time. I wasn't worried about buying a Blu-ray, having not seen it. Every time I see Peter Cushing's name on the credits of a movie, it's like a guaranteed stamp of quality for me. I don't think I've ever seen a bad movie with him in. I've seen one or two average ones, but nothing that's ever made me want to get my money back. This is ostensibly a film about a bank robbery, but don't picture guys in masks with Tommy guns. This is something a lot more subtle. So Peter Cushing plays a bank manager, or should I say a branch manager of a wider banking chain. His branch is based in a place called Havisham. Now, according to Wikipedia, Havisham is a small place on the outskirts of the Milton Keynes district in the UK. Milton Keynes is never mentioned in this film, but it is mentioned at several parts of the dialogue that this story takes place a little way from London, so it sort of fits that we would be in Milton Keynes, or at least on the fringes of it. So Cushing plays a character called Fordyce, and this guy is very distanced from his staff. They don't like him, he doesn't like them. He's the sort of guy who seems to be permanently in a midlife crisis, and every time somebody in this branch leaves a hair out of place, he comes down on them like a ton of bricks. He's one of those really irritating people to work for. But his life is turned upside down one day when Andre Morell's character turns up. He's playing a guy called Hepburn. He pretends to be a representative of the insurance company that does the insurance for the bank security, but he's lying. And at the minute that he's in Fordyce's office and the doors close behind him, he reveals his secret plan, which is for Fordyce to give him loads of money from the vault. Otherwise, apparently Hepburn has got a guy with Fordyce's wife and child, and he's going to have them blown away if Fordyce doesn't comply. So this bank manager is between a rock and a hard place. Does he sacrifice his wife and kid, or does he potentially sacrifice his career and his freedom? Because presumably if he helps Hepburn with the robbery, then he will go to jail. It sounds like a very simple setup, but as you're watching the movie, you realise that this Hepburn is a very clever character. He's had to come up with all kinds of contingency plans for things going wrong during all this, but when you boil it down, it is generally about one guy's audacious attempt to just walk into a bank and walk out with close to 100 grand without so much as firing a shot. One of the cleverest things about this film is the fact that it all takes place in the same 4 connected rooms. I use inverted commas for that because one of those rooms is the pavement just outside the bank, but then we've got the customer service area, Fordyce's office, and the vault room, and that's it, 4 rooms. I can't remember the last time I saw a film so constrained in terms of its geography. It's to this film's credit that it can do something of this quality and yet be so self-restricted on where it can go. It wasn't until halfway through the movie actually that I realised we weren't going anywhere else apart from the bank, but I liked that. I thought it was really clever. The film as a whole is definitely reminiscent of A Christmas Carol. If you look at the character arc that Fordyce goes on in this, the film takes place at Christmas as well. There's a lovely snowy effect through the window the whole time. It made me actually want to go and work in this bank myself, but when Fordyce is coming into work at the start of this film, he's really grumpy. He doesn't want Christmas cards on the desks of his colleagues. But as the film goes on, he comes to realise the error of his ways. He realises that these are really good people and he should get to know them more. And by the end of the film, he's a completely changed man. And even though we don't see it, you just know that once this film's finished, he's going to come in and act completely differently with all these other workers in the bank. We don't get any cheesy scene, thankfully, where he shouts, "Yay! Presents for everyone! Way!" But yeah, you just know, though, that he is changed. Things are going to be different from now on. I sort of have a little connection to A Christmas Carol. I've seen the old version of that. I wouldn't call it one of my favourite films. I never watch it, but I have seen it. But when I was in high school, I actually starred in a play of A Christmas Carol. I played Scrooge, actually. Let me correct myself. I played young Scrooge. I wasn't the star. I was in like one scene. I had to walk on in a flashback and basically get dumped by Ebenezer's fiance. You know what? High school was stressful enough when it came to the opposite sex without having to make it worse by staying behind after school and getting dumped by a really hot girl from the year above, albeit in a fictional sense. So yeah, I just had to stand there and listen to this girl explain to me why I was getting dumped, and then she'd pass me the ring and I'd look at it and go, and then walk off. My acting was a lot better back then, I promise you. So it was kind of weird for me realising that this film was like A Christmas Carol. It did bring back the memories. Going back to the location of this, Havisham, I just wonder, is that a reference to Miss Havisham from Great Expectations, which of course was written by Charles Dickens, who also wrote A Christmas Carol? Now, I guess you could ask the question, well, why not just name the location of the film after somebody from A Christmas Carol? But maybe they thought that would be a bit too on the nose. I don't know. Something to ponder. I'm going to talk a little bit now about Andre Morell and Peter Cushing, because they give two incredible performances in this, particularly Morell. He's somebody who I've seen before in other Hammer films. Hound of the Baskervilles comes to mind, and I'm sure there's one other film I've seen him in as well. But this is the first time that he has stood out for me as the highlight of a movie. He's perfect for this role, Gore Hepburn. It's such a smiley, witty character, and you can tell that this guy is wily enough and seasoned enough to know that this type of caper doesn't usually pan out, no matter how well you plan something like this. So at the end of the movie, when he's foiled, he doesn't start sort of wriggling in his handcuffs and shouting insults at people. He's able to still be himself. He's still smiling and he's still enjoying being part of the ongoing situation. And what really caps this character off for me is when he saves Fordyce. I mean, he doesn't have to, but as far as Hepburn's concerned, if he's going to prison, he doesn't really care what's happening to anybody else. So he thinks to himself, he might as well save the guy. I guess he could have also been thinking, well, I don't want to risk having to share a cell with this really boring banker, so I'll just keep him out of prison. I don't know. You're free to sort of interpret it any way you will. Cushing is brilliant as Fordyce. There's an amazing moment where I think he's talking to Pearson, one of his colleagues, and he just says, "You've got to help me. My wife and son are all I've got. They're all I've got." Now, I can't act it, but Cushing acts the skin off it, and if you didn't like Fordyce up to that point, you've got to like him from that point onwards. You can see that there is a really great guy deep inside. He's just not bringing it out. I really like his colleagues in this film as well. They're not as well fleshed out as the two leads, but they still feel like real people, and at the end of the film, you're just as happy for them as you are for Fordyce. The film has a great finishing moment where Fordyce's colleagues turn around because Fordyce has just left the bank, and they all sort of come together as if they're about to start talking to each other about, well, this day was a turn up for the books, but then a customer comes in and they all have to immediately spring back to their posts. It's just a cool little moment to end the film on. And when it comes to negatives on this film, I don't really have any. It was just a really enjoyable, thought-provoking movie from start to end with some great performances. So I'm going to show you the version of the film that I've got for this, but actually before I do, there's one more moment in this that I've got to share because it's absolutely amazing. So Hepburn has got this system set up whereby there's a friend of his across the street from the bank, and he's expecting to see certain signals at the window from time to time, either from Fordyce or Hepburn. So when it's Fordyce's turn to go to the window, he does this thing where he's like, he has to tap his brow or something, but he does it in such an exaggerated, awkward way. It's like, and it was comical even at the time. But then when I realised at the end of the film that Hepburn probably didn't actually have a guy out there and Fordyce was just doing it to himself, it really makes me smile looking back on that moment. But anyway, my Blu-ray, done by Indicator. Cover art's a bit basic, but that's fine. The usual decent amount of features that you get on any Indicator disc. It does have an audio commentary done by Jonathan Rigby and David Miller. It's a very good track. I listened to it the other night. They're very knowledgeable about the film. I've not checked out any of the smaller features. I do note that this film apparently has a shorter version that was released in the UK that was only 67 minutes. Now, the version I watched was the longest possible version, the US version, that's 81 minutes. That's not long for a film, so I don't know why they came up with a trimmed version that's 67 minutes. Where on earth would you take 14 minutes from this movie and still have it be the same? For my mind, it's perfect as it is. If I had to choose to make it longer or shorter from 81 minutes, I'd probably make it longer because I like these characters so much. I wouldn't have minded spending more time with them, but I think the 81-minute cut is right. So let's get to the bag of terror and find out how I'm going to score this. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 bloody axes out of 5. That's an excellent score. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. It's very clever, very witty, very well acted, and I'm very glad to have discovered it. So there we have it for today. I'll be back soon with another Hammer review. Until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.